Now that we've looked at the structural and functional divisions of the cells, let's look at their job. The job essentially of a neuron is to conduct or to receive a stimulus, convert it to an impulse, and then carry it to other neurons, the central nervous system, muscles, or glands. The act of responding or detecting a stimulus and converting it to a nerve impulse is called irritability. And then conductivity is the ability to transmit or transport that impulse or that message to other neurons and organs and muscles. When a neuron is resting, okay, its membrane is polarized. One side is more negative than the other. And in the case of a neuron, the inside is more negative than the outside of the cell membrane. Let's look at this. So here is an axon. A resting axon, the inside is more negative than the outside. They're both negative. It's just the inside is more negative. And what happens is when there's a stimulus, there's gates that open up that cause the sodium ions to rush into the cell and make it less negative. So you see here, when an axon is stimulated, the sodium rushes in and changes the potential across that membrane. This response is an all or nothing response. So once a neuron is stimulated, it travels all the way down that neuron and doesn't stop until it hits the end. Once it hits the end, it releases neurotransmitters so that it activates the next neuron, and then the next neuron will carry the impulse by depolarization to its destination as well. This all or none response is called propagation of the action potential. Either a nerve is propagated or activated, or it's not. There's no in between. Now, when looking at this, let's look at the myelin sheath that surrounds these axons, because what that myelin sheath does, and I spoke about it in a previous video, is it moves those impulses more quickly along the axon, making the nerve impulse move faster and the nervous system more effective in getting the messages relayed as quickly as possible. You have a nerve conductivity lab that will also help to explain this response or this phenomenon and help you understand it. You have the use of your textbooks as well as the PowerPoint to help through that lab and to help with a basic understanding of this concept. Let's move on to the reflex arc. The reflexes that we have, they are rapid, super fast, super predictable, involuntary responses. So when I spoke in the previous video about the patellar reflex, when that mallet hits your knee, it creates a reflex arc which you have no control over. And it's one of those functions that the body has to keep it safe. The afferent nerve brings the information or the stimulus into the spinal cord in a reflex arc. That information doesn't even go to the brain. The body compartmentalizes it. It stays in the spinal cord. So you've got the affector that comes into the spinal cord. The interneuron carries it through directly to the motor neuron, and it sends it right back out to the effector, which then causes the contraction of the muscle. There are two different types of reflex arcs. You've got your somatic reflexes and your autonomic reflexes. Your somatic reflexes stimulate the skeletal muscles. That is your patellar reflex. That is causing the knee-jerk response to that mallet. Your autonomic reflexes are the smooth muscles, the heart, the glands. So this is going to be when a big scary bear or a big scary monster is chasing you down the road, your heart is going to beat faster and stronger because of autonomic reflexes. So there's a couple of different types of these reflex arcs. You've got somatic reflexes and you've got autonomic reflexes. Somatic reflexes are the reflexes that deal with your skeletal muscles, pulling your hand off of that hot burner. Your autonomic reflexes are the reflexes that regulate the activity of your smooth muscles at your hearts and glands. So these are the reflexes that are in play when the big bad monster is chasing you down the road. There are 5 basic elements to a reflex. You have got your stimulus. It's the stimulus that initiates the whole response. So that would be putting your hand on that hot burner. It would be seeing that big monster, whatever that stimulus is. That is the first element of the reflex arc. The second is the receptors sensing it and sending that information into the central nervous system. You then have a relay of information once in the central nervous system through the interneuron. Although not all reflexes have this, it is definitely considered a part of the reflex arc. And then you've got the integration, so you've got the motor neuron that then brings the message from the central nervous system back to the muscle to then tell the muscle to pull the hand off of the tack or pull the hand off the hot burner, and then the muscle does it, which is the 5th and final aspect of the reflex arc. Now, there's 2 different types of reflex arcs. You've got a 2-neuron arc and you've got a 3-neuron arc. The 2-neuron arc is the simplest type. It is your knee-jerk response. So, you've got the mallet. It hits just below your knee. It causes the receptors in your muscles, your stretch receptors, to sense a change. They send the message through the afferent neuron into the spinal cord. Now, this only has 2 neurons to it, so this is the simplest, most basic type of reflex arc there is because it's not involving a 3rd neuron. It doesn't even need to send the information up to the brain, it just knows what to do. So that sensory information is brought into the spinal cord. It goes into the gray matter and then sends or connects with a motor neuron that sends a message out back to the muscle to then cause the action of the contraction of the quadriceps muscle, which causes that knee jerk. The next kind is the 3-neuron reflex arc. This consists of those 5 elements that we talked about earlier. This is a withdrawal reflex or a flexor reflex. This is when you put your hand on that hot burner. So here they use a tack. You put your finger on a tack. Why you would want to put a finger on a tack? I don't know. Obviously an accident. Same reason why you might want to put your hand on that hot burner. You've got the stimulus there. The stimulus through your receptors in your hand sends the information into the central nervous system where it's processed. The sensory neuron connects with an interneuron, which then connects with a motor neuron. This is where that, hey Dodo, get your hand off of the hot burner or off the tack comes into play. The motor neuron brings the message back to the muscle, which then the muscle will contract to remove the hand from the issue. These are your 2 basic types of reflex arc. The next stage is to look at the actual structures of the brain. You will do this through your lab experience. Table 7.1 here has the structures within the brain, the cerebral hemispheres, the diencephalon, the hypothalamus, thalamus, and the limbic system. The brainstem, consisting of the midbrain, the pons, and the medulla oblongata, the cerebellum. And these are all structures that you are going to need to know where they are located and what their function is. This is specifically covered in that lab, but you are welcome to use any resources available to you to help you study for this portion of this unit.